wanted to make this video for quite a while now, but I'm finally getting around to it. I've made quite a lot of videos with books on my channel, but usually showing them, either kind of reading them chapter by chapter or showing you the illustrations, etc. But I think quite a few people might hopefully be interested in seeing a kind of broader range of my collection, and I always love seeing collections of things in ASMR videos. I think she might be called Cat Eyes ASMR, something similar to that, and she always makes amazing collections videos, just kind of showing her jewellery, her makeup collections, her like flipping through magazines that she owns, things like that. And I always love videos like those, even if the things that the people are showing aren't necessarily things that I collect or that I am that into. It's always just super relaxing to hear. So hopefully, even if these kind of books don't really appeal to you, you might like seeing them, or just hearing me talk about them, or even just hearing the pages being flipped over. So I've had to split up this kind of theme into at least 2 videos. I know I'll be making another, might have to do 3, I'm not sure yet. But I'm going to be making a kind of creative book collection series, I guess, mini-series. And in the other videos I'll be showing you some signwriting and illustration books, and then just some kind of just general creative books that don't necessarily fit into this theme, because this theme is lettering. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 books. So I probably can't go into a crazy amount of detail, and I've kind of got them split up into little subsections between those kind of, we'll get on with it. Actually, that is in the wrong subsection. Okay. So, as many of you know, I hopefully am going to end up in a kind of career of sign painting, and a lot of sign painting is based around letter forms and being able to replicate certain styles and sometimes invent your own or create logos. So it's kind of a mix of illustration and painting technique and graphic design. And one of the most useful tools for me is examples of other alphabets or styles of lettering. So I'm really excited about this first one, because this first one was actually very newly released, I think in the last 2 or 3 weeks. I had the other 2 books, and I was lucky enough to be given this new one in the series, which is actually technically the first, because it's basically, this series is split up into eras. So this is custom lettering of the 20s and 30s, and I also have the 40s and 50s and the 60s and 70s. So I'll read a little bit of the back. It can probably give you a better idea than me just fumbling for words. It says a source book of vintage typographic inspiration. It's a celebration of the beautiful and stylistically diverse hand-drawn styles that were a unique feature of headline type before the advent of the computer. The This collection features over 6,500 examples from the geometric modern of Art Deco to the expressive gestural urgency of brush script, which is one of my favourite styles, so this book has been really useful for that already. And it's kind of got reviews and everything, so it's quite a heavy one. But all of these books are basically split up into kind of, I don't know what you'd call them, categories, I guess. They have a little kind of introduction that's kind of relevant to that specific era, and it gives some kind of context. So the contents are, as I said, split up into various kind of styles. So for example, medieval black letter, and then within that style they've got decorated, engraved, pen script and banners. And the next is brush script, for example light, bold, linked, unlinked, rough and inline. Thick, thin, italic serif, monoline serif, condensed serif, outline serif. It's basically a super kind of easy to reference source book. So if I decide I want some inspiration for chipped or eroded custom lettering, go to page 325. It's also split up into the actual decade as well, 1920s and 1930s. So I think that's 325. I really like this page. This isn't the right page, but here it is. So as you can see, hopefully see, they've got a lot of examples where their lettering has been kind of given an aged look, which is obviously really kind of easy to, well, quite easy to replicate with a computer. You just need to download certain typefaces or maybe add some texture on a layer, but it's actually really difficult to do, especially with a brush. Usually you either kind of have to load up the paint or the ink in a certain way and use a really specific type of angle and pressure, or you apply the paint as you normally would and then try a variety of techniques afterwards to age it. So it's really interesting seeing the type of styles and how they would have gone about it in an era where a computer wasn't an option. So that's the 20s and 30s one. And obviously the 40s and 50s one is very similar. But I have to say, I think that this one might be my favourite. I might just be saying that because the cover is one of my favourites. It's got all of my favourite colours. But it's really kind of broad in the styles that they show. There's super curly ones next to kind of carnival ones and quote circus styles, and then ones in where all of the letters are inside balloons. I have a few coloured ones in here. I think there's a really kind of, there's a lot more colour in the 60s and 70s, which is obviously expected. I really like this page. this one, I think a lot of the examples of things such as films or advertising for products or businesses. Actually, one of my favourites is on the back. Don't know if you can see. It just says witch in kind of flaming letters, but it's using a drop shadow kind of technique where, I'm not sure what you'd call it actually, but it's where all the letters look like they're kind of coming out to either side of you. And then the front cover for the 16th and 70s one is cool as well actually. It really does kind of sum up that era. Not that I did it, but... And some examples of the contents for this one include psychedelic, balloon, art nouveau, type in shapes, type with dots, and ornate. I want to look at type with dots. I just have to show this just because I feel like this really does sum up that kind of era. Really kind of funky, psychedelic, super kind of curvy lettering. Really kind of inventive. You don't see... If you saw lettering like that, you'd assume that the people using it are kind of trying to create a retro feel. But it's a shame because it seems quite difficult to be really inventive with letters nowadays and how they look, because back then they seemed to be just so kind of loose with it. So this is type with dots. So those again are just really useful. There's actually one time where I needed to use this only about a month or two ago, that precise book, because one project that I'm working on at university at the moment, before I kind of add into my final show kind of thing, is I'm making surprise kind of bespoke gifts for some people on my course that helped me without knowing it. I might show you the pieces in another video sometime if I feel like I like them enough. But there was a girl that offered some advice to me, and I decided to take her favourite kind of quote that kind of gets her through difficult times, and helps to lift her up, and make a kind of bespoke sign, a reverse glass piece with gold leaf and specially designed kind of illustrative flowers and everything, in a style that I feel she would like. And she wears a lot of kind of vintage retro 60s psychedelic kind of stuff, and seems to really love nature and things like that. So I needed to go into that source book for some inspiration of letter forms to use for the typography of her quote. And actually, I don't have the piece at home. I had to take it into for an evaluation, but I want to bring it back here soon, and it's one that I'm actually quite proud of, so I might show you that. So next I will show you a similar kind of source box. So one is vintage type and graphics, so it's kind of similar, but it's not so kind of categorized. It's more just collection, still with some kind of order, but not so split up. So for example, the sections here are typography, ornament, letterheads and trademarks. And there's actually a CD with it as well, which is very useful. I do find the history of lettering really interesting, and often how it ties into kind of political, I don't know, a lot of kind of, you can see a lot of history in letter forms. For example, immediately this looks like something out of the 1920s, and not just because of the kind of flapper girl style as well. And this one is great for, it has a lot of not just English or English speaking lettering as well, a lot of French and German. I really like this page. This book has a lot more kind of, maybe not more than the other books, but a lot of help with kind of format and placement of lettering and shape and everything. It also has, it's kind of a collection of a lot of my books in a way. It's kind of condensed these themes into one book. For example, it has kind of monograms and borders and little illustration and decorative kind of images. So it's a real kind of broad range of lettering and pictographic kind of stuff as well. So that's really useful. And another kind of really similar book in that it kind of covers a lot of different themes is this absolutely beautiful one. I saw this basically at university in the library. There's a kind of wall with, I think every few days, every week or so, the books on it change. A lot of the time they have really kind of appealing covers. And this one just kind of shot straight out at me. I think the main reason being that obviously it's got this kind of, I guess, reflective kind of foiling, which appeals to me in the gilded kind of aspect of me. And I opened it straight up, even though I needed to kind of rush around and needed somewhere to be. And I just knew that I couldn't just borrow it for like a couple of weeks. I knew that I needed, once I looked inside and sat poring over it, that it would be one of the most useful books ever. The front cover doesn't really, I think, speak to what is inside, but I don't mind because it's so kind of pretty and interesting. But basically it's all about logos and graphic design. I think I have a sneeze. Oh, it's gone. And product packaging and brands. But one, I'll just show you this page for example. So basically, most of the time, one page is used to kind of show all the different ways that you can take a really kind of simple brand name and perhaps slogan or year that they started or whatever, and all the different directions you can take it. So this would be incredibly useful if like a client wanted something similar, perhaps on their cafe or store or something like that, and perhaps they didn't want to hire a graphic designer and then a sign painter as well. But yeah, it just offers a lot of help for layout examples, and yeah, I just think it's one of the most useful books, and I've not really heard anyone talking about it, but I think that they should be, because it's very, very useful. And then the kind of second section, because it's split up into, I think, just 2 different parts. And the section, I guess I'll say what the first section is called, Retro in Icon, and the second is Retro in Design. So I guess that this shows it kind of in practice and in more the kind of style of the packaging or final product than just a logo. But this has a lot of kind of physical products, and it shows the graphic design of those. For example, some stamps and books and kind of marketing kind of products such as business cards, notebooks, maps, things like that. So the second section is definitely more about packaging, design and products. There's actually one, I think it's around here. I really like this. I have a friend that works in a really similar way to this. I'm not sure if I can find it. So much of it just really kind of calls out to me. They've got some risograph printing examples. Oh, here it is. These are postcards designed for I think it's just it's basically he takes items off a food menu and then just kind of creates really fun little postcards of that item. I think to kind of Joe Haddad created delicious postcards to log and share the joy of munching a hot sandwich at a classic eatery in New York City on a cold, snowy day. To complete his graphic memory of what he ate and loves about New York snacks, a rounded plastic-type comment on special meal boards behind the cashier counters was used to name the item or ingredients on the card's back. And it's just got some of my favourite kind of colours, and I just like how kind of simple it is. This is one of my favourite books. And this is kind of still in the same realm of, it's also quite illustrative in some ways and shows a kind of physical use of product and marketing and everything in the real world. But first and foremost, it is about lettering. Which is why this book is actually called Little Book of Lettering. And it's kind of a collection of illustrators and letter artists. And it just shows some examples of their work and how they might mix the 2 kind of styles, which is really useful to me. And it's really inspiring as well because, for example, at the back it's got some work from someone that works in textile form but using lettering, and someone that uses paper cutting as her technique. there's a lot of different types of ways for making lettering, not just pencil and paper and everything in this book. And I think I'll show you this one next. This one's kind of an outlier. It doesn't really fit in a category. But this was just a little book that I found in a kind of bargain bookstore. And it's just called Outdoor Types. And basically every 2 pages, I think sometimes 4 pages, I think 6 sometimes. Basically, they have 2 pages where they show an example of a letter and then the history of that letter. So I think I'll read one. A has remained the first letter of the alphabet for the whole of its history. The Phoenicians called it Aleph, meaning ox. The early forms of the letter show it upside down in contrast to today's version, drawn crudely like an ox's head with 2 horns sticking up. The Phoenicians used the symbol for the first sound of Aleph, which was a glottal sound, the sound made in the middle of the word bottle, in, for example, a London accent of English. I don't want to try that. When the Greeks adopted the letter, they renamed it Alpha, which became the first part of the word alphabet, and they used it for the vowel sound A, as in cat or car. It kept this sound in most European languages, but in England, as a result of the great vowel shift between 1450 and 1700, the A in words, the A in words such as name, which was pronounced nam in the 14th century, became an A sound. Vowel sounds seem more likely to change than consonants, and there are many different versions of the sound in the middle of pass, for example, within and between countries, even though speaking the same language. And then they have an amazing example of so many different types of that letter found in urban spaces. So signs, door numbers, spray painted on, stenciled on, hand painted on, neon, tiles, kind of metal, accidental letter forms like cracks in brick. One of my favourite things to do is kind of go through each page and try to find my favourite one. And it actually changes. That one. That's my favourite in that one. And then there's more on that side. Sometimes products. So that's a really fun book. So here are 2 more kind of source books or reference material books for lettering. One is Scripts. This is Elegant Lettering from Design's Golden Age. And this obviously focuses more on script lettering, but it's still really, really broad. So just from that page to the next. You can see there's just an amazing amount of range, and it shows you all the different kind of purposes that style of lettering has served. And it's useful to see how one style, that's pretty, how you could take one style of lettering and just change one or two things about it, angle or colour or the kind of theme of what's around it, and it becomes something completely different. I really like that page. So I could be flipping through these if I feel quite low on either motivation or inspiration or ideas, and that could suddenly make me decide, maybe not the whole piece, but that I really want to use some bright yellow and perhaps some flowers in a piece. It might not end up looking anything like that, but little things like that can kind of spark off the imagination. And I think I'm going to be saying it's really useful a lot. And another book that I can't even begin to describe how much this has helped me. Basically, I'm really bad at visualizing highlights and shadows and 3D and everything like that in letter forms or just in general. For some reason I just have trouble visualizing where the light would hit, and it's not always possible to have an example of that, especially with letters. If you're drawing something physical, you can hold it and see where the light hits, but with the letter, unless you make it physically kind of in clay or something, you can't see that. You can actually see how useful I found this book by all the little kind of tags I've got for perhaps an alphabet I really like or might want to come back to for inspiration. For example, the first thing that I've kind of pointed out is this page. So this book is called Shadow Type, Classic 3-Dimensional Lettering, and it just shows a lot of different ways that 3D lettering has been used. Again, a lot of it very old-fashioned before the invention of the computer. And I think that the one I needed to remember for this was, they were all really useful, but I think it was the drop shadow on these letters. And the next tab that I kind of, I really like that I made sure to remember was these. I'm playing violin. I just hit my face. So some pages kind of show just one big use, like that, and some have got tons of different styles or a few kind of detail shown styles. Oh, I also forgot that this book is split up into, I think, country. So yeah, the first section, for example, is American. I'm not actually sure if they have a British one, but I think that American, French, German, they tend to have some really good kind of, I like that a lot, like a really good strong kind of lettering style. I think that the British, or perhaps falling behind a bit. This is one of my most useful, a kind of double drop shadow, where there's a shadow, a kind of physical 3D shadow of the letter, and then a shadow of the kind of imaginary product, if that makes sense. I would never be able to visualise that without a tool like that. Same with this style. So, I also have 6 books here that are kind of similar to most of the ones I've shown you so far, in that they focus more on kind of examples of alphabets. But the great thing about a lot of these is that they show full alphabets from A to Z, maybe some other characters or numbers as well, but they all have a different theme. I have some other books that are kind of brought out by the same companies, sometimes the same compilers and kind of authors, I guess. A lot by Dan X solo, but they're more kind of pictorial, such as monograms or hands or banners and scrolls. But one example, this is probably my favourite of the. I say that, but then I look at the others and I love them as much as well. And I've also got some tabs for this book too. This is Bizarre and Ornamental Alphabets. So a lot of these are very, very ornamental. Nothing that I could ever invent. Nothing that I'm that kind of imaginative to be able to invent. But a lot of them are very pictorial as well. For example, in the background of these, I'm not sure if you can see, but there's a lot of animals. For example, at the sea, has a cat in the background. E for elephant. Not all flowers actually. F for not all animals. Sorry. F for flowers. B for bees, butterflies, beetles. A for alligator. I thought it was all animals, but looking closer, D is for desolation. It has a tiny little, you won't be able to see it, but it says desolation in one tiny little section of it. Yeah, it's odd. There's some really unusual ones. For example, this one at the back, I'm not sure how you describe it really. It seems to be kind of circus performers or kind of creatures making odd shapes with their bodies. Sometimes multiple people kind of forming letters together. Yeah, a lot of these are very kind of monochromatic ones, I guess. Yeah, it's just really, really interesting. And another of that kind of type, actually, again, I've got a lot of tabs used for this one. This has probably been another of my really kind of highly used ones with the 3D shadow type book. So this is Circus Alphabets, and this was selected and arranged by Dan X solo. And I can't explain how much I love this source book. So all of these are free to use typefaces as well, which is really useful. And as I said, they show the same typeface from A to Z. And there's just so many there's such a broad range, but they really do fit into the kind of theme of circus. And any with a tab on are some of my favourites. Or ones that, for a lot of these actually, the ones that were useful for a specific project or purpose. That's amazing. And two more of those are Gothic and Old English alphabets and Celtic and medieval alphabets. Gothic or black letter script, practiced by many medieval scribes, was a principal model for printer's type when printing was first invented. Characteristic thick strokes and stress on points and angles give the style a power and dignity that transcends the temporal. And the Celtic and medieval one. So these alphabets go all the way back to 15th century. This one, actually, this one as well, and I don't think this one, but the circus alphabets one, and the Gothic and Old English one, and the Celtic and medieval alphabets one, and the next one I'm about to show you, Victorian display alphabets. 100 complete fonts were all arranged by Danek Solo, and it says at the bottom of them all from the Solo typographer's catalogue, and I have that right here. It's got 4,147 display typefaces. They're not in that one. It's not a complete kind of A to Z kind of alphabet, but I found that with some of them you can kind of research them using their names and sometimes find the full alphabets. So the good thing about these books is that it contains the full kind of use of them. So the Stereotype catalogue, as I said, has a massive array of lettering, but it tends to just show either A to F or G or K or just a phrase. For example, this one says European design. This one says posture improving, and it's kind of bodies, again making letter forms. This kind of starry one says headlines that sparkle. So they just try to show a kind of broadish range of the letters within that typeface in as few kind of words as possible. So this is more a kind of sample book, I guess, and I think that this was a kind of way to, if you're interested in a particular alphabet, then you could contact the people and perhaps purchase it. Something like that. So I have 3 books left to show you. Oh, actually, that one I'll have to save for. This one doesn't technically fit in with this kind of theme, so I have 2 books left to show you. And they're both actually kind of workbooks almost, or kind of more, instead of a reference or source book, it's more a source book of information or tutorial kind of things. So the first is Hand Lettering for Everyone, and this is a really useful book. It's an actual workbook. So it says, ready, set, hand letter. In this engaging and instructive workbook, Christina Vanko shows beginners and experts alike how to create their own alphabets and step up their style to create beautiful lettering that gets noticed. Filled with creative prompts and exercises, along with tips and insights from top designers and illustrators, Hand Lettering for Everyone is an essential resource and a lot of fun. So for example, I'll read out. They have a kind of instructional section, for example, type anatomy, and really useful things that I think that make me think I should have taken graphic design so I could be taught these terms kind of face to face. And they have actual exercises to make you try certain kind of movements and techniques, and encouraging you to kind of have fun with those techniques and not stick so closely to the rules. And then they have kind of specific 1-page kind of tasks for you to complete. For example, it's been said that writing the word hamburger will give you the general look and feel for a whole alphabet. Think about a whole alphabet you'd like to hand letter. What characteristics would it have? When you're done thinking, cover this page with the word hamburger. And I'm not going to show any that I've done because I don't quite feel like this is a kind of sketchbook, and I don't have anything that's super good. I'll show you some that I haven't completed. They also sometimes make you do drills of certain kind of sections of letters. Frustration page. Doodle your frustrations out. Make it quirk. This one is just saying, what is the quirkiest thing about you? Letter it here. If you feel the need to erase, think again. Make the quirk work. So yeah, this is another kind of tool that's different to the other styles. That it's a source of inspiration, but instead of being a kind of inspiration where you're flicking through others' examples of works, you're kind of actually being forced almost to make your own. So it's really good for motivating you. It's like a little game almost. And this one is one of my favourite books, and it was recommended not so much personally to me, but kind of second-handedly by a lot of sign painters on Instagram. When this came out, everyone was kind of suggesting it, and after it had been kind of pondered over for a while, a lot of people agreed it's really useful. So it's actually by a graphic designer, but I think you can tell just from the front it's very fitting with kind of sign painters. So it's got kind of history and context and inspiration, and then some kind of actual tutorial type things. And it basically it assumes that you're going to ask questions and it answers them before you even have to. So this is why I didn't include this in the sign painting kind of section, because it's not specifically about sign painting. It could actually be very, very useful for kind of vector lettering and more computer-based graphic design, but it's definitely a book about lettering. And it kind of takes you from the beginning sketches of a piece of custom lettering to the final kind of neatened thing. So it's quite good if you are given, for example, a commission to design a logo, for example, as seen in the new retro book I showed you earlier. And it takes you through the stages of sketching the design out and then refining it, and then kind of vectorizing it or neatening it up. And then you might print that out and then pounce it onto a wall with chalk and then paint it, kind of hand painted. But yeah, it's kind of a combination of all those techniques. So I definitely see how it kind of came to be quite prevalent and liked by the sign painting community. So I have a feeling that I probably have some lettering books in my space at university or in my drawers, because these are all out on a kind of shelf. I've probably missed some out, and if I've noticed before I make the next creative book kind of collection video, then I'll try to throw them in as well. But yeah, these are generally my kind of go-to books for getting some inspiration on lettering and maybe pulling myself out of a kind of lettering slump, or even if I need specific help, for example with 3D or finding a font or typeface that's relevant to a specific time period or style. These are just really useful and really fun as well, and I love flicking through them. Yeah, so I'm glad that I finally got around to doing this video. I already can't wait to make the next one, and I hope that you enjoyed it.